Oh shit, there's a lot of you. So I'm not a natural presenter like maybe Matt was earlier. I'm not raw dogging it like he did. And also I'm going to ask for a volunteer because I'm going to need some help maybe. It may not be anything, but maybe somebody up here. She's going to be Amy, come on. All right. There's a card. Sometimes I can't find the word I'm looking for. If I wave at you and snap or something, just wave at you. Just shout out one of those words, it doesn't matter.
All right.
All right, so my name is Daniel Fu. I am a user experience designer of about 20 years. I also do a lot of amateur comic book work and been fascinated by video games and movies since I was a kid. And in the sort of confluence of all those things, I started to notice that I've developed a sensitivity to certain kinds of images and illustrations that made me feel not so great. So that sensitivity did help me become a better illustrator because I didn't want my drawings to cause that sensation in people. But before I kind of dive into it in more detail, how many people here had heard about the Uncanny Valley before tonight? Okay, not too many. And how many of you who had heard of it feel like you could explain it to somebody else? Okay, cool. So without further ado, maybe for those of you who haven't heard about it, maybe it's better to show and not tell. So.
Oh, Jesus.
So a lot of you are probably thinking, I wish you had told me and not shown me. And that's, yeah, so this is basically the visceral sensation of the Uncanny Valley that you're probably feeling right now looking at these three kids. This is from the movie The Polar Express from 2004, filmed by Robert Zemeckis, starring Tom Hanks. And so they kind of look like kids, right? But something is up with sort of everything about them. The faces, the eyes, the texture of the skin, how the light hits their hair, like nothing quite works, but you kind of, get what they're trying to do here. So you might be also thinking, this is 2004, surely they solved this by now, but there's a whole shit ton of things that I expect to be fixed by now that hasn't been. Yeah. So what is it? This is Wikipedia's definition. The Uncanny Valley is a hypothesized relation between an object's degree of resemblance to a human being and the emotional response to the object. I don't think this is broad enough, so I rewrote it. The Uncanny Valley is a hypothesized relation between an object's experience. The Uncanny Valley is a hypothesized relation between an object's experience's degree of just noticed that the font changed when it got ported over here, so the red lines aren't in the right place. The Uncanny Valley is a hypothesized relation between an experience's degree of resemblance to reality and the human emotional response to the experience. That's what it should say. Apologize for the confusion there. So why did I make that change? We'll get into that a little bit later. So back to visual definitions. The Uncanny Valley term was coined by Masahiro, a Japanese man, back in the 1970s in relationship to robotics. So we're going to use pop cultural robots to kind of get a better understanding of the phenomenon. So here we've got a graph. Human likeness is on the x-axis, and relatability is on the vertical axis. Human likeness is easy to understand. How human looking is it, right? And then relatability is how is our relationship to that entity within the first few minutes of reading it. So I know you're very familiar with probably some of these, but imagine if you met them for the first time, right? So on the very left side, we've got R2-D2, who basically looks like a garbage can. So walking up to R2 the first time, you might understand as it beeps and boops and kind of slides around in the 3 wheels that it's a robot entity and you're like, oh, this is cute. So it's not very human-like, but relatability, kind of positive, right? Next up is Wall-E from the Pixar movie Wall-E. Now he's got 2 eyes and 2 arms. Still kind of looks like a trash can. What is our deal with robots and trash cans? So Wall-E's eyes are very expressive, right? So your ability to relate to him is up a little bit, and just because he's got 2 arms and 2 eyes, further to the right on the human likeness scale, right? To the right of that is Marvin from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy from, I think, 2011. So again, 2 arms, 2 legs. This time, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. It's a large head. Also kind of looks like a trash can. But because of bipedal and head, a little bit more to the right on the scale of human likeness. And also now Marvin actually talks, so maybe a little bit more relatable, right?
He's depressed.
He is very depressed. So also relatable. And then C-3PO from Star Wars as well. 2 arms, 2 legs, head, very much more human proportions, right? Sort of the average human proportions. And also speaks, I don't know, like a million languages or something like that. So more relatable. That's by accident. Well, okay. So now we're going to get into the weird shit. So this is Alita from the movie Alita Battle Angel by Robert Rodriguez from, I think, 2016 or something like that. The actress playing the main character Alita is Rosa Salazar, except they've done some shit to her face. Her eyes are quite a bit larger than a normal human's would be. I think because they are referencing the original Japanese manga that it was based on. They made her eyes kind of match the drawings from that, except just for her, not any of the other characters, which is like really fucked up. So she definitely more human-like, but our relatability to her, I heard somebody go, ugh. So she's down here. Next up, this is Megan from the movie 3 again. This is also a human actress, child actress, I think. But they've added a bunch of prosthetics on her face, given her some contacts, that's a wig, just to make her weird, because in the movie, she's a android friend for little girls. Or girls, boys, I don't know, but the characters in the movie even call her creepy. So she's more human-like than the previous character, just from the proportion standpoint. But the way she moves, the way she talks, all of it super creepy. So she's down here under the horizontal bar of relatability. Next up, we have Ava from Ex Machina, a movie by Alex Garland from, I think, 2014. The main character here, played by Alicia Vikander, they use her face, this time unadulterated. Right? The previous 2 had prosthetics or CGI applied to them. Here, the face is unadulterated, but it's the rest of her body that's made to look mechanical. the human, our eyes and the way that we interpret human faces is so, word.
Hostile.
Yeah, no, that's terrible. Okay. So,
Highly tuned.
yeah, thank you. Highly tuned to recognize human faces. And so, despite the fact that the rest of her body is mechanical looking, we can relate to her better because her face is completely human. So she is further to the right, more human-like face, and then back up a little bit on the human likeness, or sorry, the relatability bar. And then finally we have the T-1000 from Terminator 2, filmed by James Cameron from 1992, I think. And this is the T-1000, which is a liquid metal robot, but can morph into any form that it wants to. And spends most of the movie looking like this guy, Robert Patrick. There's no prosthetics on him, there's no CGI on him, it's just Robert Patrick. So completely human looking, indistinguishable from a human. If you had been walking down the street and you saw Robert Patrick, you might swoon a little, and then you would go like, okay, he's up here. So if we draw a line through this plot, you'll see that from R2 we kind of go up to C-3PO, and then once we get to the weird kind of human face stuff, it goes back down and then comes back up for the fully human Robert Patrick. And that dip right there, that's the Uncanny Valley. So literally the term is coined because of that giant dip there. So ignore the copyright infringement. Don't tell Stephen or George. So we're going to play a little game. It's called the Uncanny Indiana Jones and the Uncanny Valley. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw up pairs of drawings of Indiana Jones. They're going to be about the same level of detail. Each pair is going to be about the same level of detail. The skill of the artists are going to be slightly different. They're going to be labeled A and B. When I throw up the first pair, or each pair, what I want you to do, if you think A is more disturbing, hold up one finger. If you think B is more disturbing, hold up two fingers. And if you think neither are really that disturbing, keep your hands down. Okay? Any questions about that? Is that clear? All right. Here's the first pair. Which version of Indy makes you feel funny? A or B? Please, fingers up. And again, if you don't think either of them are really that weird, then keep your hand down. So keep your hands up. Mostly B. Okay, all right. Second set, A or B, or neither. Okay. Third set, A or B. Interesting. This is not the result I expected. All right. So, what was this all about? So I'm really curious about the people that picked B here, because I feel like that's a really good drawing of Harrison Ford. This one is weird as shit. So
That's a Tom Hardy look. That's not Harrison Ford.
Right, but it's yeah. There's nothing uncanny about it. It is quite.
It's just a different guy.
he's making a face. Anyway. So, a couple of reasons I threw these up here the way that I did. The first thing is that I wanted to show that the Uncanny Valley doesn't only affect 3D renderings of things. So it's not just through CGI, it can also be through 2D illustration. And the other thing that I was trying to show that maybe didn't come across, but I saw plenty of people calling this Uncanny, which is interesting. But the bar for crossing or avoiding the Uncanny Valley goes up as detail is added. So the more detail you add to something, that higher that bar is. This, it looks like a cartoon, right? Which we're all used to, and usually nobody has much of a problem with a cartoon. But once you get to higher levels of detail, it can get weird really quickly. There's no question that the one on the left took a lot more time to do than the one on the right. And the skill of the one on the left is probably way more better than the one on the right. But because the one on the right is so abstracted, our minds are able to deal with it a lot better than this sort of strange folds of skin on the right side of his face over there, and his lips are kind of fucked up. So I've got this question up here about how we can prevent it, and you might be thinking like, why the fuck do you care? Like, this is frivolous compared to what Matt was talking about earlier, right? But I'm a user experience designer, and for watching like movies or playing games, the act of looking at things is part of the experience. So as like just the natural way my brain works about like trying to fix things like this, I start going there. And like I said, I love movies, and they fucking ruins the movies for me. Like the Matrix on the left, I think this is Matrix Reloaded. This whole scene of Neo running around and it's terrible. And then this mounting scene, or the scene where in Lord of the Rings where Legolas mounts the horse. I was loving the movie up until that point. It took me like 10 minutes to get back into it. So yeah, I would like to find a way to keep it from happening. So turns out there's like 3 ways to do that. The first one is to bury it. So this is from Avengers Endgame, and in the mass of smoke effects and particle effects and all of the people on screen and the pulled back camera angle, really don't notice it because you don't know what to focus on, right? The second one is to avoid it entirely. Pixar does a really good job of this. The characters are really stylized, so your brain doesn't have that issue with the 3-dimensional renderings that they've created, right? They don't look, I mean, that guy's head is a square. They don't look entirely human, right? But you're okay with that because of that thing that I was talking about earlier around the abstraction of the form. And then the final one is to cross it entirely. This is Rutger Hauer playing Roy Batty from Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner movie. Hollywood basically cheats anytime they have to cross the valley, they just use an actor. Typically. But CGI is getting a lot better. There's also the deepfake stuff. It's not always successful. When it's not, it's really off-putting. But when it works...
The early 80s. That was the early 80s.
Yes, this was...
Right.
Well, I mean, they did it. They used Rutger Hauer. So back to the definition that I wrote earlier. The uncanny valley is the hypothesized relation between an experience's degree of resemblance to reality and the human emotional response to the experience. Why did I make that change? I took the words human and being out of the definition because I think it's broader than that. So if you think about a bouncing ball, if the ball bounces higher the third time than the first time, you're like, something's wrong with that. And in fact, I can't think of which one it is, but I think there's horror movies that have used that exact thing to show something being really creepy and weird, right? So for the UX people out there, I think there's some. I invited people from work, so they might be watching. So beyond visuals, there's things like Alexa and Siri. We have self-driving cars. We have virtual and augmented reality experiences now, right? These are all experiences that are trying to mimic some form of reality. And none of this was available like 10, 20 years ago. We should be blown away by every single one of these technologies, but the reality of it is like, fuck you, Siri. I said call Brad, not call Dad. You stupid piece of shit, and then you throw your phone across the room. And then your self-driving car like breaks for a pothole because it thinks it's a rock, and you don't use it for a week, right? Like, so that, I think, are manifestations as well of the uncanny valley effect. And I will point out that if your friend did that while driving the car, you'd be like, oh, okay, that's fine. But the second it's technology, you're like, fuck this thing. So that bar, again, the closer it gets to like reality, when that fidelity gets high enough, your expectation for it to cross that valley gets really difficult. So what do we do about it? Turns out it's kind of the same three things that you would do with the movies. You could, okay, so this one doesn't work that well. If you try to bury Siri's response in a bunch of nonsense, it's not really going to work, right?
Elon buries his clients.
Okay. Maybe. So you can avoid it, right? If you think about how we used to ask for information before Siri, you would type the information, or you would type your question into Google, and you would get an answer, right? That keyboard and screen is an abstraction of what you're trying to do. So if you screw that up, you're like, screwed up, I'll type something else. When Siri screws up, you're angry at me, right? So that is one way you can handle that. And then the final one is, again, to cross it. And that's really difficult. But Google is getting really close. They're about to release a voice assistant that can make appointments through the phone for you. And that voice assistant is nearly indistinguishable from a human. If you had picked up the phone and you answered, they work with you, you probably wouldn't be able to tell. Because it's imperfect. It has pauses, it says and they figured out, I don't know exactly, well, a bunch of AI stuff, but they figured out how to make sure that the intonation of the speech is flawless. Like 10 years ago, there would be that pitch change as they're trying to stitch words together. It's not doing that anymore. It's completely indistinguishable. So that's coming.
Overly optimistic.
Maybe. So after 20 years of thinking about this nonsense, I also started to wonder where it came from. And turns out this is not an exhaustive list of possibilities, but these are the four that I felt resonated the most. And so they kind of make sense, right? Like and all of this is maybe like lizard brain stuff, right? This may be evolutionary reactions that we have just for survival purposes. So the first one, fear of illness. If you see somebody who's like kind of green under the gills or stumbling a little bit, you maybe stay away from them because you don't want to catch whatever they got, right? Next, fear of other cultures. Back before we had global transportation, if you were a tribe living somewhere and another tribe happened to come into your area that you've never seen before, the way they wore their hair, the way they moved, the kind of clothes they wore maybe creeped you out a little bit because you didn't know if they were there to take resources or do whatever, right? Fear of unsuitable mates. You're the person that you and the person you ran into had a head like this, and you were like, "That my kid gonna end up like this?" You're like, "Fuck no, like get away from me." And then fear of infiltration. This actually maybe goes back the furthest because there's plenty of examples in nature where animals mimic other animals to do something, right? Whether it's avoid being eaten or to eat something. Like there's an evolutionary purpose to that you might, if you can recognize it, you can avoid it or eat. So one last thing, and this might end up going a little dark, but stick with me. There were some of you during the Indiana Jones activity that on the last pair, the two pencil drawings, the detailed pencil drawings, that didn't raise your hands because you were okay with both of them. I'm trying to say here. Okay, so as we saw, right, there was a pattern here, right? All of these start with the word fear. What I've started to think about is that this uncanny valley reaction is probably also the source of all of our isms, racism, genderism, all that stuff. So there were some weirdos out there who were like, those two pencil drawings were fun. Didn't have a problem with them.
I'll make both of them.
And at first, like, it sounds like an insult, but actually maybe you're the pattern for the way forward in this fucked up world. Because maybe by not being able to notice those things, that's something for us to aspire to, the rest of us that have that sensitivity, right? But on some level, maybe that level of naivety is not always the best. So there's still room for us sensitive folks, the skeptics, that notice some of these things, because it's important to see a charlatan for what they are, right? So probably we need to work together to figure out how to move forward in this world. Because we can't do it alone. Those two sides need to talk to each other and figure things out. And also, the cure for too much naivety and too much cynicism is the same. It's just learn more stuff, have more knowledge, right? So I guess the message is...
Oh, really? Because I'm a...
whoever you are, go out there, learn more stuff about the world and the people around you, and make the world a better place. Thank you. Questions?
Yes. Questions. All right. Is this on?
No.
Should be.
Yeah. Weird. Just whack it.
Test. It is not on.
Uncanny valley of microphones.
Right.
You want to use that one?
Reboot it.
All right. We're turning it on and off again.
The classic.
The ritual.
Testing.
begun.
Not happy. Let's check the mixer.
Weird. Okay. Hold on just a moment. If you have questions now, you will have questions when we figure this out.
Should we just pass this one around? Yeah.
Quite possibly. Everybody's making me work tonight. I don't know what. Hello?
Nothing changed.
Hi.
was awesome. I was once told by a professor that I had a exceptional tolerance for ambiguity, and I don't think he meant that in a positive way. And yet here I am operating in a job that my inability to detect or not detect change in a visual field over time has super critical results. So my question is, will the uncanny valley migrate with our tolerance of AI? Can it only be adjusted genetically? Can we train ourselves? Is there any reason to train ourselves?
That's a really good question. One thing I forgot to mention during my talk is our sensitivity to the uncanny valley is on a spectrum, like a lot of things, right? And yes, I think it's something that you can train into. And one of the ways, well, I guess the only way that I know of to do it is to learn how to draw. Which a lot of people think they can't do, but I bet you can. Basically, in trying to understand in trying to understand the human form, you need to be really observant of what people look like and how they move, right? There are a lot of artists that I've seen where they will draw somebody walking like this. And that's a hard time because it's not physically going to work. So you start paying attention to those details, and then you start learning how to draw other things, and those details start to matter, and then you're paying more attention to the world around you. Photography could also help. So if you don't feel like drawing, then pick up a camera.
Here, let me take it over there. Okay, so we're headed over here.
I'm just curious about sort of your definition of relatability, because I was thinking of, for example, the movie Her, and to me, like when you were showing all that stuff, what kept coming to my mind was the emotional connection to the image, right? So it could be a box with a huge square head on it, but if they're able to transmit emotion, to me that's where the relatability comes from, right?
That axis was really more, it had something to do with that, but it was more like, is it a positive relationship that you're forming or a negative one in those first few minutes? Obviously, time spent with whatever it is. Like, I bet more people relate positively to R2D2 than C3PO, because C3PO is kind of annoying. But yeah, it's that initial emotional relationship that you feel.
I was just struck in the non-visual way of the increase in the email communications that I'm receiving from AI bots that are more and more trying to be passed off as a person that's working with me. I got a really nicely worded rejection for a problem that I was dealing with a company, and a profuse apology from this robot. And it totally pinged the uncanny valley for me because how frustrating is it to receive something that is clearly has no connection to actual empathetic being, and yet it's communicating as if it did. And so I imagine that's something that everybody's dealing with, but I feel like it's in the same, even it's not a visual thing, but it's definitely something we're all dealing with more and more.
Sorry, make it run around. It's all right. Yeah, totally. The point that I was trying to make was, it's not just visual, right? There's any sort of interaction could kind of trigger that experience. It is trying to emulate something in the meat space that we live in. And if it doesn't quite get there, then it definitely triggers that. I think.
Can I get him?
So I feel like maybe you're approaching, like that X and Y axis, you're approaching probably the version 2 of that was your pitch. When all of those fear, I feel like we're afraid of something's lying to us, basically, right? So it's a self-preservation, right? So, and you said that the ones that are more cartoon-like or more, we can detect that it's not real, like very quickly, and then we're okay with that because we reconcile it, right? It's just something that is abstract, is given to us. The closer to that likeness is where you're getting to that valley, because when it's close, but it's not real, why is it trying to trick you, right? So same thing with, whether it's Siri or whether it's all these other things that are AI, right? That comment about, we have something like at work that tries to give us an AI quote to give to our employees for congratulations or thank you. And the way it's written is so over the top that if I were to send it to an employee, they'd be like, oh, give me a break. Like, why are you blowing sunshine on me? Right? So that's the part where you're getting close to that weird place. So I almost think like that curve you're building is how to go across where it's actually some kind of a dip where you can still detect it's lying to you, right? When you're trying too hard to fake something when it's real. So it's almost like that. In some ways, we are more relatable to R2D2 because it's not trying to trick us. It's a trash can that understands us, but meanwhile, Alita, I don't know what that's doing, right? So that's kind of that next level of that realization. So if some of these images and things that can get to that point where it gives me the impression it's not trying to trick us, but at the same time give me that reality, then I think we'll get to that point. Right, when we're over. Like that's where you say you cross it, basically.
Okay.
One thing that I also didn't mention is that this reaction to the Uncanny Valley is a learned experience. Kids don't have this. You show a kid the shittiest drawing, they're like, yay. But it's the exposure to their environment and what they get used to over time. So if a child is raised with a bunch of people that just look like them, anybody that doesn't quite look like those people are going to be weird for them, right? If they're not exposed.
So it's like kind of like kids aren't afraid of as much things, right?
Right, yeah. So a lot of those isms get built in as we grow and interact with the world around us, and the more constrained that world is, the weirder everything else is.
All right, y'all. I think we have 3 more pretty persistent questions across the crowd, and I'm just to make sure that we fit it all in time. Make sure you ask good, tight questions. So that being said, I'm going to start back here and work my way to home base over time. Especially since we got all this jogging going on.
Getting your steps in. How do you feel about humans who then elicit that Uncanny Valley reaction? John Travolta, for me, makes me incredibly uncomfortable with his face. What is that? I guess, how is that relation to Uncanny Valley when it is an actual human who is eliciting that response?
I have experienced this. Some friend of mine posted a GIF recently of a kid trying to act like an adult, and that was something similar, I think. Yeah, like I said, the Uncanny Valley is on a spectrum. If somebody is acting, there's people that take on countenances that maybe don't fit our typical exposure to the people around us, right? So it's basically what I was talking about just now. You get used to the people that you are with and how they emote and express themselves, and John Travolta seems like an alien. So I get it.
All right. Here you go.
So I think the Uncanny Valley also has a social context. Right? So for example, if I go watch Fox News, it gives me a very weird feeling. I expect there are other people that go watch MSNBC, and they have a very weird feeling. That's what the wokeness argument is about, and what the MAGA hat argument is about. You haven't really talked about cultural setting the frame for this Uncanny Valley. I think it's very real. Like R2D2 has a very different view and frame than C3PO. So could you address a bit your thoughts on how the culture of fate sets this up?
I feel like I kind of did with the way that children don't get this, right? It's the kind of society around them that drives that reaction. So I think to your point, yeah, it's totally that. Like, I share some of your thoughts on, watching certain news channels because my group, the people that I grew up with and the people that I know, behave a certain way. And then so, to your point, the folks that are outside of that group, kind of strange. But that's, like, to move forward, we need to move forward together, otherwise it's chaos. So how do we try to figure out what that looks like, broader than, who we kind of keep our company with?
All right, y'all are batting 1,000 on the questions. We were going to bring it home here. What you got?
Yeah, with user experience, there have been some attempts at making technology more relatable that have spectacularly backfired. The first example I can think of is Clippy. What went so wrong with Clippy from your perspective?
That's a really good question. That thing was terrible. I think it was a cartoon, so on some level you should have been like, I'm fine with it. But also it was too pally for what I was wanting out of my computer, right? So I think it was in that instance, it was probably its quote-unquote personality that triggered the Uncanny Valley, and that it was trying to be like your friend. And I don't want a paperclip as a friend. Anyway, last one? That was the last one?
Yeah, I think you going out fashion Clippy is real strong exit.